All right, students, we're ready to make our clay mold. We're in the midst of going to be making paper, and we need to press our paper into the clay mold. And as we talked before, we're going to create a design ahead of time. You're going to design your, come up with your design, draw it out on paper, and then have it ready for when we roll out our clay and make our clay mold. Here's a couple of examples of the clay mold. We will be creating it. I will fire it. Then we will make it. We'll press our paper right into the mold and create an impressed paper like this one here. What we're going to do first is you should have already been brainstorming, coming up with an idea in mind. And then we're going to roll out clay and begin to carve it. All right, so you need a slab of clay. First of all, you're going to get a ball of clay and a tray of tools, and you're going to wedge the clay. A lot of times clay gets thrown into the bag in like this one here with multiple amounts of clay that everybody just threw their scrap back in. So you do want to wedge it, and this is how you wedge. I usually use 2 palms and just kind of push it and turn, push and turn. What you're doing here is making this ball of clay more consistent throughout. You're eliminating any air bubbles, and it also air bubbles are a problem when we fire. If any air is trapped in the clay after you've worked with it, you certainly don't want it to try to find a way of escape and exploding out of your clay. So you are wedging it, making it look more consistent. Now, I also want to flatten this clay out a little bit, so you can slam it a little bit. Don't go crazy on me. And if you slam it kind of at an angle like this, not working very good. This is pretty hard clay, what I've got today. You can throw it down at an angle and it will flatten evenly. Next, I'm going to get a couple of these sticks. Make sure they're the same size. Set them next to your slab of clay, and you can begin rolling it out. All right, once you've rolled it out, what's the purpose of these sticks is so you can get a consistent, even thickness of a clay slab. I would say I have a couple of sizes there. I would make sure you get 2 of the larger sizes, so that you have some thickness that when you carve it, you can easily carve down without going through. All right, then you're going to get your design and you're going to put it on directly on your clay. You know, pull away the excess. And there you're going to draw your design directly on the clay. You're going to keep your template here, and then you're going to draw directly on the clay and leave an impression. Now, as you can see here, I have a letter. This is a letter. Anything that's a letter or a number that would be backwards, if it was to be pressed in, we're going to press this our paper into this mold and then pull it away. And obviously, when we do that, our D or any other letter is going to be backwards. So what you're going to do with your design is take it over to the light table, trace it onto the back, and there I've got my reversed design. Then you're going to just take either a pencil or a pen tool, and you can just basically trace out, press into the clay through the paper, and outline your design. All right, once you've done that, you can pull away your paper. You're no longer going to need the paper. I would set it aside though in case you need it as a guide, and then you're going to begin to carve away. Now, I know at first oftentimes these clay tiles tend to be a little soft. The clay is a little soft, sometimes it's a little bit harder to work with. We will be wrapping these up and setting them over the counter, and at times when you come back to the next class period, you can work on it some more. It will be leather hard, which sometimes is just a little bit easier to carve. This one's a little bit firmer than the other. Now, I would use, you've got a couple options here when you're carving. I wouldn't go all the way through. I would outline your design again, and then you should have already decided what was supposed to be taken away and what is going to be left. And I would figure that out ahead of time. Some designs, it's more important than others. When you have a design next to a design, something's got to stay, something's got to go. Okay? For example, in this one here, I had to decide what was going to be in relief and what was going to be pressed out. So when I press this out, as we talked about before, things that are dug in will be sticking out on the paper, and vice versa. Things that are not dug in will be recessed on the paper. Okay, so you've got a couple tools here for digging out. I do particularly like this one. It's a sharp knife and a scoop, and you can scoop. I would go down about halfway into the clay, and don't go all the way through, but I'd just go halfway through. And the different depths that you go in your carving will reflect in the paper that you, so you might have something that you've dug in deeper, and then something that's maybe a midway a depth. You might have various depths going on here. All right, so you're going to carve away and take away the design that you wanted to take away. Okay, in this case, I'm carving out the D. Now, this is coming out pretty well, but I also want to smooth it out. So I'm going to be carving my design, and I'm also going to want to smooth out. I do find a good method is once you get the thing carved out and you've got some rough edges, is to take a couple of tools. I've got a couple, this is a popsicle stick where I've cut the end off, and I can kind of get a nice flat edge with it. I've got a few other tools like it where I can kind of get in. Let's say I want kind of a design here, and I can kind of create kind of a snake trail and get that going. In this case, the clay is still a little bit soft, so actually snake trails and things like that, carving out evenly, will be another issue. So I can use this kind of technique to kind of smooth out and create a nice smooth surface. How this looks is important because it's going to reflect how your pressed paper is going to look. Now, your final step, once you've got this kind of carved out more thoroughly, I find that the paintbrush works really good. You can use one end to kind of smooth out and even out the side walls of what you've carved out, and then you can come back in with a nice paintbrush and kind of smooth out. The paintbrush does amazing job of getting things smoothed out and looking a little prettier after it's all carved out. Excess clay, we'll keep that and just kind of toss it back into the pile of clay up at the supply table. Once this is all done, you may want to put your initials on the back so we can keep track of whose is whose. Don't forget to reverse any letters. Put all your tools back when you're done, and we'll let these dry out. Make sure you keep it flat. Clay does kind of have a tendency to want to curl, and so make sure you lay it flat, even maybe put the board on top just so that it'll dries out flat, and we'll put them over on the counter to dry out. Loosely put something over it so it'll dry out slowly. And that is the end of my current demo for this portion of the mold making for paper making. Let me add this one little tip here too. If you're not done this class period, I do want you to give it a couple spritz with the spray bottle, and then I want you to wrap it up. I've got a host of these plastic bags. Put the whole board and tile into the plastic bag, seal it by tucking under the ends, and then set it over on the counter to be available to you the next time you come. and then you can work on it some more. It does even harden just slightly to leather hard sometimes when it's sitting for a couple days in the bag. If it's too hard to work with, give it some extra spritzes so that it stays somewhat pliable when you're working with it. And if you are done, then I want you to leave it uncovered when it's finished, and that way we can dry out, and then they'll be ready for me to fire them.